Hiya. So today I thought what I'd do is to do a video on my old workshop. Welcome, this is the old shed, my old workshop I used to do my videos from in the olden days before I moved over to my new one. It's on a bit of land that we've got just to the bottom of the garden. It's not very well or very often used. It's not really looked after. It's falling to pieces. It's not all that waterproof or all that warm, but it's ideal for storage. I use it for storage for camping gear and for me homebrew, for me winemaking kit. So we try not to use it for dumping ground for any old rubbish. We try to keep it relatively tidy and neat, purely like say for camping gear. There's no electric down here, not anymore. And of late I've been in and out of here because I've been needing some wine brew kit or been needing to tidy or sort out my camping gear, and I could just do with some lighting. I don't want to go to any expense. I'm not going to bother putting mains electric in here. However, solar panel, I've got quite a few solar panels, and solar is the way forward, I think, especially for something like this. It used to have lighting in, and there used to be a lot of solar connected to this. Again, it's all got dismantled when I moved over to my new workshop. So I thought today what I'll do is just to put a basic kit in. Now this is going to comprise of a 12-volt battery, 12-volt solar panel. I think it's a 25 watt panel I'm going to be using. I will go through those in a short while. And whatever I've got spare lying around I'm going to use. I'm not going to spend any money, so it's literally going to be whatever I find that's not being used and what's spare, I'm just going to make use of today on this workshop. It's a bit of an old knackered thing, but it does its job. So I might as well have it working with lighting. So let's have a look inside. Okay, it's a bit grim inside. Basically, this is it. This is the top of the door. Now, lighting. I've got this old strip light on the top, which I don't use, although I can do. Just being terminated there, not doing anything. That's the outside light, that's a halogen, which is just kind of hanging down at the moment by a plug, not connected to anything. Right, now this is an old solar panel regulator, solar charger regulator rather, maximum of 5 amps. I made this, basically it's a simple charger that I bought, which was 5 amp maximum. I put inside this project case, put a couple of LEDs on just to show when it's full and when it's charging, and just to show the current of the charge, and then the output. And now if I remember rightly, let me just stabilise this camera. If I remember rightly, this light switch controls whatever's connected to there, which was a battery bank at one point, 12-volt battery bank. So that's going to be the main battery lead, that's going to be the main source where I'm going to connect the batteries to. That goes up to the switch, and when you switch this switch on, it takes the power up one of these wires to here. Okay, so that's going to be the 12-volt output there. This cable here is going to be the charge power going down the other cable straight down again into there. So this cable here serves two purposes. This is going to allow power to go both ways. So obviously when we're not using any power and there's more power coming in from the solar panels, it's just going to charge the batteries up. That's effectively the idea. But I just need to work out how I'm going to and what I'm going to do with everything else. So let's go back outside and see what I've got to play with. Okay, first things first, this is the battery pack I'm going to be using. It's an old battery pack, it's covered in dust and sawdust and everything else. It's just basically a car battery. There's nothing fancy about it. And now I know car battery is not the most ideal battery to be using for this sort of project. However, it's always a big spider. However, it's what I've got, and it saves having to use any of my other gel batteries or anything else. So this will be fine for what I'm going to use it for. I've actually used this in the past for as a starter for my car when my old battery was failing all the time. So that's still connected. So I'm going to keep those on. It's also got plugs on. Now before the power pole connectors that I use now for my radios, these are the types of connectors I used to use. And I used to have one of these permanently connected again to this battery. That's no good anymore because, like I said, I don't use that type. And I think somewhere, I've got a 12 volt, yes, here we go, 12 volt outlet, cigarette light socket outlet. Okay, so it's quite a useful battery pack to have this. And like I say, that's going to be ideal for the applications today. It's going to be powering for the lighting. I've decided I'm going to use an inverter. I'm going to use 240 volts for the lighting. Not the most efficient way of lighting. However, the light that I've got in there is quite adequate anyway. And I don't see the point in changing all the lighting just to suit. If I've got an old inverter to use, I might as well. It's one I've stripped down. 12 volts connects by the terminals there. That's the output now, live, neutral and earth, and that's just the LED indicator. That was, I can only assume, the switch, which I've permanently joined together. So the only way now of really turning this on and off is by connecting power here. As soon as power is connected here, you're going to get 240 volts out here. This is ideal for this application because, like I say, I've got that light switch already on the wall, and that means as soon as I flick that, power's going to go into there, out of there, and it's going to power the lighting. These are useful to have. Thought I'd give one of these a go. So that's going to be connected to the outlet there. So I can plug in a couple of different lights in there. So I've got the little fluorescent light on the ceiling, and if I want to plug in any other clip-on or tabletop light or anything like that, I've still got two other outlets. Also, I can plug in things like the glue gun because I'm going to be using this for this project in a short while, and I'll be able to get the mains from there, providing I've got enough charge in the battery, which I should have. Solar panel. Let's have a look what I've got here. One of the older panels that I have is this small one here. Now this is only a 5-watt panel, which would be okay. It would give enough charge just to keep this battery flow charged. But if I'm going to be using this for some time, which several hours in the evenings, I could probably do with a bit more power going into the battery because it's only a small car battery, so it's not going to hold that much power for me. So I need something a bit more substantial. Now, some of the solar panels you've probably seen from my other projects, a little bit larger. I'm going to be using this one today. This is actually a 24-watt panel. Maximum is going to give me is 1.36 amps. Now, you're never going to get that. Very, very rare will you get that. And that's obviously pointing straight towards the sun. Well, looking at this workshop here, this shed, I'm not going to be connecting it directly to the sun on any fancy bracket. I'm going to just more or less connect it and have it pointing towards wherever the sun's going to most likely be for most parts of the day. I'm not that fussed about getting the most efficient power from this. There's no real need to, not for this application. So as long as this is outside pointing roughly in this direction here, that's going to be adequate for me. Okay, so I've got that done then. So this is all the kit I'm going to be using. I've got my toolbox. I've got pretty much everything I'm going to need. So the first things first, I think, it's to mount the power supply. The last thing I'm going to do is connect the batteries, so that can stay here. That's not going to be needed for the moment. I think the power supply can wait till the very last. I need to mount this first of all, mount the outlets, and get the solar panel done. In fact, we don't know what the weather's going to do. It might start raining soon. It might be a better idea to actually get the solar panel done first. Let's give that one a go. Okay, so this panel it's been stripped down to the very bare basics. On my other video, I showed you a solar panel charging up a radio pack. This is one of the same panels, and what I've done, I've actually removed the outer aluminium casing and the frame, and I've removed the box and the back, which was the connectors. Now what that did was basically just have a diode inside to stop any back current going into the panel, because if you connect this straight to a battery, yes, it will charge when it's nice and sunny, but when it's dark and there's no power being generated by the panel, the current will actually be drained by the panel. So we need to put a diode into place, and we need to get some wire to go from here into the shed. Now, I also need to waterproof this because that's no longer waterproof. So what I intend on doing is to solder the diode on there, get some cable, and then just, I think the best thing I can do is the glue gun straight onto here and cover it with melted plastic, and that should make it watertight and hold everything nice and tight for me. For that, I'm going to do my soldering iron. Great thing about all this is that I've got gas soldering iron. Do I have any solder? I should have some solder in here. Yes, I do. Excellent. And my wire cutters. So those are the first things. There we go, it's on the floor. Diode. Right. Now let me just get this soldering iron heated up. There we go. Okay, that's got it. So put that there for a second. Okay, so that's heating up nicely. Cable-wise, this isn't ideal, and I know I'm going to get a lot of comments left about this sort of cable I'm using. It's basically speaker wire I'm using, but because I'm using such little current going into the car battery, remember this is only charging the battery. This isn't going to be supplying the power to the inverter, which does require a bigger gauge cable. This is just going to put a charge into the battery. There's no other load other than that. So this can be just speaker cable like this, which would be fine for this size panel. So we've got a few meters here. I'm going to worry about the length later on. First of all, just get it all unravelled. One thing to remember is whenever you're dealing with electrical work or batteries or solar or anything like that, is you want to make sure that there's no short circuit, and you don't really want to be working on live equipment, which is one of the reasons we're leaving the battery to the very end. When I've connected this to the panel, as soon as I lift that panel up, that's going to generate a voltage, which is then going to make it possible to cause damage if there's a short circuit with the two cables coming off the end of it. So I'm just checking this one end, and there's no short, they're not touching each other, so that's fine. Okay, so that other end is okay to be hanging loose. That's not going to do me any damage. This end here, I'm going to strip down and get ready to solder. Now then, let's just get these ends tinned. This is where we have to improvise when we're working outside. There we go. Wonderful. First things first, like I say, we're going to tin these ends. One, two, wonderful. Now, put that aside. Diode. I don't need the legs to be quite that long on that diode. You can see that. Now, I'm going to cut these down to size. I just want about 1/4 to 1/2 inch, if you can see that, of leg each side of the diode. That's all I'm going to need. You do run the risk of damaging electronic components with the heat if you're not careful. I've regulated the soldering iron. It's not at a very, very hot temperature, and I'm quite quick at doing the soldering, so as long as you don't keep the soldering iron for prolonged periods of time, you should be okay. Now, we need to make sure we get this diode the right way around. Now, without getting into the technicality of a diode, basically a diode allows the current to flow from one way. It only allows the current to flow in one direction. So we want the current to be able to flow out of this solar panel. We don't want the power to go back into it. It's only got to go out. So this diode here, it's got a grey band on one end of the diode. Now, you probably can't catch it from this camera angle, but this top end where my thumb is, there's a grey band. Now, that indicates that the current will be able to flow that way, but the current can't flow in that way. So I always look at it as the grey band being to the side that actually stops the current flowing into. So that's the way it's going to go, is to tin these terminals here. When we tin them, what we're basically doing is just putting a layer of solder on, and we're making it possible then to easily attach soldered cable onto. So that's that done. Now then, which of these is positive? I don't know. Right, I'm going to have to get my multimeter out. I think that side's the positive side, but you know what, we don't take chances. We're going to check. So if I get the multimeter out, and we're literally going to just put the two terminals of the multimeter on the terminals there and see where the voltage is. So select my multimeter for DC voltage. There we go, up to 20 volts range. And I'm just going to simply lift that up so there's light, and I'm going to touch the probes of the multimeter onto the two tags of the solar panel. Now there we go. That's showing me the voltage. It's just going off the screen just over 20 volts. Obviously there's no load attached to this, so although it's kind of like 17 amp or 17 volt, 12 volt rated, you're going to get more than that because there's no load. If you put a load onto the panel, the voltage will come down to its true reading. So that's showing me just over 20. And if I have the terminals the wrong way around, it shows it as a minus figure. So as long as it shows as a positive figure, that shows me that that side closest to me is the positive, and that's the negative. Very important. Right, next I need to tin, probably put that in there. I need to tin the diode. So just put a little bit on the end, again being quick about it. We don't want to burn out any of the components. That's quite warm still, give it a second. There we go, wonderful. Okay. And we make sure we put this diode onto the positive tag. Heat up the tag first, then introduce the diode. Like so. Okay. Now the cable, find the ends that are tinned. Now, again, we need to make sure we get the polarity right on this. On the two, looking at them carefully on the insulation, you'll see markings on most cables, and yeah, I can see that. Bit faint, but there's one that's got white markings all across. That to me is going to indicate that I'm going to be using that as the positive. So connect that. Okay, and that's the end of the soldering for the time being. We can check this now to make sure we're getting the voltage out and we've got the polarity correct. The same way we checked earlier on. Now remember, this is going to be producing current, albeit not very much, but it will produce current as soon as that's turned over. So we need to be mindful of that. Multimeter out again. Now I'm looking for the insulation with the white markings, which I believe is that one. So that was the positive. Turn that back onto there, and if I connect to negative, in fact it's actually showing me a voltage now. We're already picking up 10.6 volts, and that's with the panel facing down. It's obviously picking up ambient light, but the mere fact that that's showing me shows that the diode's connected the right way around, and I've got the polarity right, positive being onto positive, so we know we're good to go with that. For precautions now, I'm going to make sure I put some tape just on the end of the terminals, because I don't want these touching anything and shortening out. So that is now safeguarding both terminals. Only thing left to do now is to weather tight these connections here. Okay, for me to have electric out here, as this isn't such a mess and it's not that easy to connect power to for the moment, I'm going to use this. This is my 12 volt portable battery system. This will jump start my car. It'll give me 240 volts via the socket here, as well as having various outlets as well, 12 volts. So that will do for the time being. Let's get the heat gun plugged in. Okay, this will take a couple of minutes just to warm up. So leave that on its side and that'll be fine. Let's give it a minute. Okay, we're back. I've now got a coffee. Cool, right, this is now hot enough. So what I want to do is just to cover lightly these terminals here. That will stop corrosion and it will stop them getting shorted out. Perfect. It's not the proper way of doing this, as you've probably gathered. But like I said, this is a case of getting things done any way I need to. It's not for anyone else. No one's paying money for this service. This is just what I'm doing for myself. And that is good enough for what I'm going to need it for. Let's get a close-up of that. There you go, can you see that? You can see, if I come over, that's the diode connected to the positive terminal, and that's the negative, and the wire there, all being held nicely with this this glue that is basically like a hot glue gun. It's just going to wait another minute or two for that to cool down, and that should be absolutely perfect. Exactly what I needed to do. Okay, so once that's dried or cooled down, we need to mount the panel. Now, as you can probably tell, with the sun, I'm going to extend these properly in a second. The sun, as we speak now, is straight in front of me. It's about midday, about 12 o'clock midday. So the sun is quite low down. We've got the trees there, but I think if I can get the panel coming somewhere towards this direction, that should give me this sort of power and the sun that I need to charge the batteries. So the panel, come in a bit to the camera. This is now dried enough. That's now cooled down. That's solid. That's waterproof, and there's enough on it to actually stop it coming too loose. A bit loose. It'll be okay. What I do need to do, oh, I'm sinking. What I need to do is to get this mounted somehow onto this roof. Balance that there for a second. I need to get this cable into the shed. There's a few different areas I can look at. That felt's not sticking down. I could well be able to mount it. Or I could just run it down there, couldn't I? It'd be easier. Right, I'll come to that solar panel in a bit. I've decided a better way for the time being is just to run the cable on the rung of the roof, down under here and straight through. Remember, I'm going for simplicity and easiness. I don't have to do a proper knee job. Although you've got to take pride in your work, there's no real point in getting into a lot of trouble on something like this, which in all realistic measures, there's a good chance I'm going to be taking down this shed in the summer anyway. So there's no urgency for a long-term job. Excuse me, that threads in nicely. I'll tidy that a bit up. Inside here, there's my wire. It's long enough. So that will now get me working.